Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm working on my Jeep again, my 1951 Willys CJ3A, and I haven't forgotten about my Yamaha YL1 project. I'm still working on that. You might check that out on some previous videos. Waiting on some parts for it. Turns out it's a fairly early version of that model, and some of the original parts are different and a little hard to find, but I've got them coming, and we'll be back to that in the next video. This video, I just wanted to share with you something I found out here with the Jeep. If you check out my previous videos on working with the Jeep, I ended up having to pull the head and change the head gasket. The head gasket in this motor from when it was overhauled 30 years ago eventually failed around the number 3 cylinder, causing the exhaust valve to stick. And I was able to get the head off, get the valve working again, and replace the head gasket with a good quality head gasket. This is a 1943 Willys engine, surplus, that was put in the Jeep, gosh, who knows how long ago. But it runs great. Like I mentioned, it was overhauled 30 years ago and still works fine. But the head gasket failed. I changed it, and before installing the head, I took a die and chased all the threads on all these studs, and then I took a tap and chased the threads in all the nuts. And you could actually spin them down by hand, which was really great. I followed the factory manual on how to torque this down. You basically start in the center, work your way out, you know, crisscross like this, and then clear back to here and here and here in the center. And you get them all to 30 foot-pounds, and then you go back to the center and start over and bring them up to 50 foot-pounds, and then the last go around you start in the center and bring them up to between 65 and 70 foot-pounds. And after that, what I did was I started it. It started great, and I ran it through one heat cycle. I got it up to full operating temperature and drove it around a little bit, let it cool down to room temperature, and then I checked all of these head nuts again, and it turned out most of them had backed off about 10 foot-pounds. So I went through the torquing procedure and brought them all up to between 65 and 70 foot-pounds, and ran it through another heat cycle, let it cool down, checked them again, and a few of them had backed off about 5 foot-pounds. The rest stayed where they should be. So I torqued those back up, ran it through a third heat cycle, and I've just gotten done checking them. They're all fine. They're all still between 65 and 70, so I think they're going to be happy living there for a while. But I think maybe the next time I change the oil, I'm going to check them again while the oil's draining, just to make sure they're where they should be. And I think if you have a flathead motor that's all cast iron like this, with steel studs and nuts, you might want to check that periodically to make sure that the pressure's the same torque, same compression on the gasket all the way around, especially when it's new, so the gasket gets a chance to kind of learn where it's going to be living. And what I used for that was a rather inexpensive torque tool. I'll just set it here so maybe you can take a look at it. It's a beam type with no moving parts. It has a graduated scale here at the bottom, and it's both in metric and SAE, foot-pounds and inch-pounds. And it's nice because it has no moving parts. I have another more sophisticated torque tool, but you know, it's got springs in it and a twistable handle, and you dial in the torque you want. And this thing is just foolproof. And it's an inexpensive tool, and it's supposedly one of the most accurate. You could keep this in the Jeep if you wanted to for a while, and I may do that until I've gone through a couple of oil changes, just so I can quickly check it. And what I've got on it here is an extension and an 11/16 socket. These back nuts back here, let me see if I can zoom in on those. These three in the back are pretty close to the firewall, so you might need either a crow's foot or a universal joint between the extension and the socket itself to get those. But otherwise, it's pretty easy to do. Most are accessible. This one underneath the coolant hose is a little difficult. Yeah, my recommendation would be go ahead and actually check those periodically just to make sure. The other things I'm going to do on the Jeep, if you look down here, you can see my good old fuel pump. That's been on there for 30 years. It works great, has no issues. It's a single diaphragm pump, and that's all its job is to pump fuel. It has a glass dome on the top. You can actually see the fuel flowing through it, and it goes through a brass mesh filter, which I'm not worried about. The fuel tank's new, the fuel lines are new, the pump itself was new when it was put on. But that's all it does. And if you watched my earlier video on installing windshield wipers, the vacuum style, I actually installed a vacuum line into the intake manifold, which goes up all the way up to the motors on the windshield. And it works fine, but it's not a regular source of vacuum. The motors tend to change their rapidity or their rate based on the vacuum. So if you're going up a hill, there's not a lot of excess vacuum to run those motors, and conversely, when you come down a hill, there's way too much vacuum and they go way too fast. So what I'm going to do, the reason I brought up this fuel pump, is I'm going to take that off and I'm going to put in a dual diaphragm fuel pump. The lower diaphragm pumps fuel and the upper diaphragm makes a constant source of vacuum for the wipers. And I'll lose the glass bowl because the new pump does not have that. But then I'll have a constant source of vacuum for the wipers, and that'll make that a lot nicer. The third thing I'm going to do, if you've ever tried to check the fluid level in your master cylinder down here, which you can't even see it, it's really hard, really difficult. It's mounted to the frame and it's dark, and I've never had a brake problem with this, but the access is through the floorboard or through the top down into here. It's really hard to add fluid, and it's really hard to even check fluid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount a remote reservoir that I found right here to the firewall, and it has a straight down gravity fed tube that feeds a new cap to the master cylinder. So the reservoir up here is an opaque plastic material. You can see the fluid level inside, and if you do need to add fluid, you add it up here, not clear down at the cylinder. So that'll be really nice to quickly do a visual, check my fluid level. If it needs any, I can add it, and it'll gravity feed down into the reservoir like that. So that's another improvement I'm going to make. But anyway, I just wanted to share this with you, especially the thing with the torquing of the head nuts. I was really surprised to see how they backed off so much after that first heat cycle. You know, I guess all the metal expands at different rates, and but now after 3 heat cycles and now just checking it just a few minutes ago, all the head nuts are fine, and I just wanted to share that with you. So just a quick tip, if you have a flathead motor and all, iron block, iron head with steel mounting studs and nuts, dissimilar metals, you're going to want to check those once in a while. So anyway, that's it for now. Next video I'll be back to the YL1, hopefully getting that back together. It's starting to look really good. And so watch for that, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.